I had a daughter who once said, I'll never marry a firefighter. And I was like, yes, I am raising you right. What I later realized, and this is probably 15 years later, I realized what she was saying was, I don't want to marry a guy like you.
Oh.
I know. About 100 firefighters die in the line of duty per year. We honored 204 just a few weeks ago at the National Memorial in Emmitsburg, Maryland. We honored 316 total firefighters in 2025. Things that are taking the lives of firefighters that we didn't know about before, but now we know. They raised their right hand, they took an oath, they served their community, and we honor them for how they lived, not for how they.
The conversations behind these doors are not what you think.
Engine 4, residential fire.
Engine 313, engine 311, engine 3.
People think they know what firefighters run into. They almost never see what we carry home. The public sees the response. This show is about the costs.
Curiosity catches us all. There is much more.
Season 1 brought to you by Spoke. Learn more at spokemovie.com.
Yeah. Hello, everyone.
Yeah. Here
Welcome
we go.
to Unseen Exposures Live
Yes.
at in Iowa. We're in Iowa.
We're in
Iowa City, yes.
Yeah, Iowa City.
Here at the University of Iowa.
Go Hawkeyes.
Yeah.
And there was some rain today. And we're at the FRCE Health and Wellness Symposium. And with us is Victor. And we want to thank you, first of all, for being.
You're welcome. Thank
with
you for the
us.
opportunity.
Super awesome.
And could you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So, Victor Stagnaro, I came to work for the foundation as an employee about 16 years ago. But my interest with the foundation, the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation, started way back in the late 90s. I was a fire chief's executive officer. We were walking through a trade show and we saw the board director for the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. And he said, I want to bring the incident management system to the memorial. And so I was asked to find somebody, and I thought, man, what a great opportunity. I didn't really know much about the foundation. The foundation was actually created in 92. And so this was like 97. So it hadn't been around for very long. So I thought I would give it a shot. And so I was really the first incident commander, which is a lot different than what it is today. But running the memorial, helping to run the memorial for the foundation. And of course, my interest went back to, starting off as a volunteer firefighter and then getting hired in Prince George's County, a suburb of Washington, D.C., and 25 glorious years of being able to wear a uniform and serve the community and be able to be with the fire service. So this was a great transition for me to come onto the foundation. I started off as the director of fire programs, which was really focused on our line of duty death prevention programs, then the managing director, and now for about 2.5 years as the executive director for the foundation and executive director of the First Responder Center for Excellence, which is why we're here, running both organizations. And of course, with Frank Lieb's leadership as the managing director for the FRCE, then my job is to make sure he's got the resources he needs and get out of his way.
That's amazing. So it was kind of a bit of a windy road, but maybe you can tell us about when you first started to today. What have you seen change in terms of your work?
Yeah, well, thanks. Yeah, so the early days, we were honoring on average about 100 firefighters per year. And that has waned a little bit. It was actually, there were several years where it was fewer firefighters. We actually, one year, I think we were close to 70, which was phenomenal. Just, really our efforts to try to reduce line of duty deaths, and not just the foundation, but organizations across the board. So, the early 90s, we would have the ceremony in October back then. And, that's where really you get connected. You just see, you see the families and you see what they're going through and the opportunities as an organization to be able to support those families and honor our fallen. And, you know, to be part of the fire service, having come up through the fire service, you understand the need and the the way that we honor our fallen heroes. You know, it's there's so much rich tradition in making sure that somebody's service is really commemorated through these funerals and these, you know, memorials that we have. So it's really special. You get it in your blood, just like you do with the fire service. And so the ability to continue to do that just was really special for me. And then as far as changes, you know, the way that we've been able to support the families in so many more ways. We've had scholarships. We used to do, like, everybody who submitted for a scholarship would get a portion of whatever was budgeted that year. Now the way we do scholarships, it's by financial need and academics. And so we're able to change the lives of fire. We're able to do full rides. Everybody gets something. But for example, there was a family in North Dakota, lost a mom to cancer. About 3 months later, lost a dad to on the job, you know, as a firefighter, line of duty death. And for those kids, we've been able to do full rides for those kids, you know, and be able to support those families. So just being able to do that. Our kids camp, we didn't have a children's grief camp. We're doing those now every year. About 60 kids whose father or mother or sometimes brother or sister was a line of duty death. And if you ever went to kids camp as a kid, you remember the bonding and the social connections that you make. This is like that on steroids. And these kids, the connections they make, you know, when a kid goes to our kids camp, they don't need to ask why they're there. Everybody knows and we know about peer support, right? And when we talk about mental health, and you know, there's so much known about peer support. These are kids that are peers for one another. And now we have it. It's been around long enough, for about 14 years now, where we have kids that have aged out. They've gone to kids camp for many years. They've aged out. Now they come back to be big buddies, because every kid gets a big buddy.
That's amazing.
And so now the big buddies are also Fire Hero family members supporting younger children. So I get goosebumps thinking about it,
Yeah,
all the
that's
different
really-
things that we're doing. And then in 2004, we added line of duty death prevention to our mission. So my predecessor, Ron Sarnicki, who was the executive director for 20 years, over 20 years, you know, he realized at one point, you know, we should be doing more to prevent line of duty deaths. What can we do to have fewer firefighters to honor, fewer families to serve? And that's the 16 firefighter life safety initiatives were created. It was sort of a blueprint to reduce line of duty deaths. That has changed over the last couple of years. We've got a new outlook on the initiatives and things that are more connected to the community and community expectations, as well as the operational needs for firefighters. But cancer, COVID continues to be a main event when it comes to line of duty deaths, cardiac. So a lot of the things that the FRCE is working on, that what Frank likes to say is the blind side of what's taking firefighters' lives, we're able to do a lot more work in that area. But I'll say that even though we had fewer firefighters in many years, our criteria has changed. We are now realizing that firefighters are dying from cancer in a lot higher rate than we ever noticed before. We've added suicide as a line of duty death in certain circumstances. So this past May, first weekend in May, we honored 204 firefighters who've died in the line of duty, many of which are cancer deaths, and thus far one suicide honoree, but we know that that's going to increase. So the demands on us as an organization has dramatically increased, and our need to educate the fire service and do a better job of protecting our firefighters has also expanded.
Personally, I just want to, thank you. Two of the firefighters that you guys recognized this year were from my department, and their families went, and they said it was an unbelievable experience. And then 4 total families from our neck of the woods were there. And what you guys are doing means so much to us as members as well. And I don't think we get a chance to say that or hear it, because it's the families that matter. And we all knew in that first interview, like, we'll do anything, right? We wanted this job. We fought for the job. We tested hard. We worked hard to stay it. And it's not about getting to retirement anymore. It's getting to enjoy retirement. And for those members that can't and have their families, like, I don't know, there's not really words that fit into like what you guys do.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. It's a tremendous team. Just a tremendous group of people who are both extraordinarily dedicated, passionate, and capable. And I've shared this a few times where we talk about, people talk a lot about passion. And they're like, this is something I'm really passionate about. And, I often think not my job to satisfy your passions, but bring your capability and your passion. It's something we can work with. And I'm so blessed to have such a tremendous group of people who are that dedicated and that skilled to be able to do the job of honoring our fallen and serving our families. And then what Frank does and the FRCE does on the line of duty death prevention programs. We talk about the 16 initiatives, and one of those initiatives was that every firefighter and their families should have access to psychological support. What Frank is doing is an initiative, but it's also a commitment. And Frank's making good on that commitment through the FRCE. And that's why this event that we're having here in Iowa City on at the Mental Health Symposium is so essential to what we do, so that we can have fewer firefighters to honor. So,
yeah, it literally leads into why we created this podcast. It's more about building awareness. And I know you haven't seen it because it's not out yet, but the movie Spoke is really about those blind sides that Frank talks about specifically. We go into cancer, we talk about sleep deprivation, we talk a little bit about nutrition, we talk about PTSD, and trying to expand on those conversations is why Amy and I started this podcast specifically.
Yeah.
So yeah, to add those 16 in and to like unpack those, I think that's it. What are the other ones that you can think of off the top of your head?
Well, the initial one was, they weren't done in any particular order, but a lot of the things that we talked about early on was the culture of the fire service, and we got some pushback on that, and rightfully so. There's.
Well, sorry, for the people who don't know, what do you mean when you say the culture?
Thanks for that. So the culture of the fire service, that there needs to be a conversion or a change of mindset when it comes to the culture of the fire service. You mentioned it. People love being firefighters, and look, let's be honest. We love being able to take care of people. There's no question about that. It requires a lot of courage to do that. But there's also a bit of an adrenaline junkie kind of mindset as well. And, the cavalier, what many people would call the cowboy. And here we are in Oklahoma, right? So Iowa, yeah, sorry. Yeah, Iowa. It's also cowboy country here in Iowa. So, and the pushback is, there's a lot of good things about the cowboy culture. There's a lot of good things about the fire service culture as well. It's a culture of service and duty. Those are the values that, we want to hang on to. But when it comes to, really evaluating the risk involved in a fully engulfed, building where, look, let's be honest, if it had been an EMS call, we probably wouldn't have rushed in. Right.
What is an EMS call?
Emergency medical services call. Right. So, and look, I probably shouldn't be saying this on this podcast because I know we'll probably get some pushback, but you think about, if a fire is called to a vacant building, we rush to that fire, and rightfully so. We should, every incident requires, that kind of dedication and commitment, but let's be real about some of the culture of the fire service. You and challenge me on this. Feel free, and anybody else can challenge me on this. If that same call comes out for a working code in a vacant structure, they're probably going to not rush the same degree that they rushed to a working fire, because we want to get that hose line. We want to be the first one in. We want to put that water on the fire before the second dude gets there. And there's that culture of, and a lot of it is good, but let's be thoughtful about going into a structure that's vacant, that has been vacant, that maybe is burned multiple times, And do we really need to risk our lives to go in there and put that fire out because there might be somebody inside? That's a judgment call on the scene, and I don't fault anyone because they're boots on the ground when they have to make that decision. But think and be smart.
Has something happened though that's sort of like, have there been some incidents that?
Unfortunately, there's been a lot of incidents where you can take a moment and step back and think about what were they really trying to accomplish here? What was that crew trying to accomplish here? And again, I want to be cautious about the way I describe this because, when I'm not boots on the ground, I'm not there at that particular moment having to make that quick decision. But I would say that there's been times where you can stop and think, it's probably not the smartest thing to do. And there's lots of videos. Look, you can go on YouTube and watch videos of firefighters on roofs without self-contained breathing apparatus. They're trying to vent the roof and there's fire blowing off behind them. That fire is already vented. So are we really taking a step back on the operational side of things and considering what am I accomplishing here and does it help the incident? But the other part of that is the exposures that we have, the things that we see and the things that we're working on here on the Mental Health Symposium to talk about, how do we better support our firefighters for when there is a line of duty death in your department, when there's a suicide in your department, the number of fatalities that firefighters respond to day in and day out. We did a CPR class for the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation staff, and somebody asked a firefighter from Ohio who was there helping to teach. They were teaching about Narcan, and they said, "How often do you do CPR on somebody?"
And what's Narcan?
Narcan is a you probably should explain Narcan better because you're actually using it on a more regular basis.
Narcan, it blocks those receptors.
Oh.
And so what happens, pretty much in layman's terms, when you use opiates, it will drive your respiratory down, so you'll slow your breathing down. When you slow your breathing down, you stop breathing. When you stop breathing, your heart will stop at some point in time, right? So what we do is we'll grab the bag valve and we'll just breathe for them. And then we'll use Narcan to break those receptors so their brain starts functioning and said, oh, I do need to breathe again.
So it's almost like an EpiPen.
It's like it's an antidote to the
opiates. Yeah.
Opiates.
Police have them. There are schools that have them now. People can give them all over the country, and we carry it as well.
But I'm sorry I interrupted, but you were saying for Narcan.
So we're doing a training on CPR and Narcan because there's a lot of folks that are saying you just carry it in your car. You can in a regular. You don't have to be a trained EMT to have Narcan.
Could even have Narcan.
You can request Narcan and have it in your car. Get trained on how to use it. It's a nasal spray that goes up, and people immediately get. They awaken from their condition that they were in. So anyway, we're doing this training, and one of the members of the staff asks, "How often do you do have you done CPR on someone?" And my answer was, "There's too many. I can't remember." And the firefighter that was with us, he's an active firefighter, still riding fire trucks. He said, "Probably once a day." So what people don't really recognize is how often firefighters and EMS workers are exposed to death. And that's on a daily basis. You're going to see dead people. So,
one thing about CPR, we want to make sure that's clarified because we had a new guy and he was just like, man, I just can't believe we didn't get it back. I'm like, they're already dead. You don't do CPR on live people. Their heart has stopped. We are working to move blood through the system mechanically by pushing on their chest. They're already dead. So if we do get what's called ROC, or where we get their pulse rate back, it's not, I don't want to call it a miracle, but it's lucky. And it doesn't mean that we get them to the hospital and they have a pulse, doesn't mean that they're going to live very long either. There's no guarantee of that, right? And these defibrillators that you see all around at hospitals or schools or now pretty much everywhere, the malls, that will only shock certain types of rhythms where the heart's not beating correctly. It's not going to bring somebody from the dead back. It's not like the movies.
Right.
So, but yeah, I mean, weekly, a tour CPRs happen regularly. And even though, I'm from King County where we've got one of the higher save rates, but that's only for one type of heart rhythm. It's not for all of our CPRs, right? So the clarification of like bringing somebody back from the dead is like a weird way to say it, but they are. And we're not really, we're bringing them back from their heart's mechanical is not working correctly or the electricity is not working.
It's very rare to
But
revive
then-
someone. Yes.
Right, but then if you do, then you're taking them to the hospital.
Oh, of course. Yes.
Right.
And
Yes.
some of them actually, I've got plenty of letters in my small short career of 15 years that they walked out of the hospital
Wow.
because of, but most of that I would say it's not us, we're doing the right thing, but bystander CPR helps. If you aren't CPR trained, get CPR trained, like 100% get CPR trained. And really right now it's just compressions.
Yeah.
Like if you need to learn how to check for a pulse, because it's not fun pushing on somebody's chest if they're actually breathing or have a heartbeat, that doesn't make sense.
Right.
But if they don't, check for a pulse. If they don't have a pulse, start pushing on their chest, have somebody call 911, activate it. And, if there's a defibrillator there, you open the box and it will tell you where to put the stickers and hope for the best. I mean, change somebody's life. And it's actually, you might not change just their life. You're changing their whole family's life.
Mm-hmm.
That's the biggest piece.
Well, and that's the thing maybe is while you're training for this, there has to be that component of, how to just deal with the drama of that or the just, it's
Well, yeah. Well, I think maybe for the young firefighter, for sure, like the first firefighter who was like, how come, we didn't get a revival? How come we didn't revive him? And I think you get conditioned to like pretty, probably not going to happen. And I think that's the thing about firefighters. And when it comes to mental health, firefighters are dealing with people's worst day, maybe the worst day. And my brother had a fire years ago, and he was living in Georgia, and for about 15 or 20 years, he lived his life of what happened before the fire and post fire. He everything was measured like, oh yeah, that was before the fire.
wow.
And so we don't always comprehend the impact that it has on the people we serve. But for us, it's just another day. And here's the other downside of the fire service for the mental health component and how it impacts our families is, when my daughter, who's 14 years old and has a boyfriend break up, I'm like, you call that a bad day?
Yeah.
You don't know what a bad day is. And so if I'm an accountant, I'm probably a little more sympathetic, and nothing against accountants,
No disrespect.
no disrespect to anyone. It's actually disrespect. It's the fact that we as firefighters need to understand that we bring that mentality home to our families.
So that's
And-
the cowboy culture.
That's the cowboy culture is
Call it
like,
calloused almost.
yes.
Yeah.
And you do,
But you almost have to compartmentalize it because it is just, if you were to really let that all be part of who you are, wouldn't you just be crying all the time?
well, yeah,
In
you do
fetal
need
position.
you need to compartmentalize it, yes, and you need to be able to deal with it, and you need to be able to come home and be as sympathetic as you need to be to your loved ones. And sometimes, they think, oh my God. In fact, I had a daughter who once said, I'll never marry a firefighter. And I was like, yes, I am raising you right. I don't want you to marry a firefighter. But then as I learned more about mental health and mental health support and the way it impacts your family, what I later realized, and this is probably 15 years later, I realized what she was saying was, I don't want to marry a guy like you.
Oh,
I know.
that's a heartbreaker.
Yes.
That's a
So,
heartbreaker.
yes, we have got to do a better job of, being able to be good people, not only on the job, but, all the time, and recognize what the job does to us, how we get rewired, and so that we can be compassionate and caring for those that are around us.
And I guess the mental health crisis is not just among firefighters. I mean, it's, the country as a whole. And, you mentioned that COVID is still part of
Mhm.
a lot of these line of duty deaths. I think that you can say kind of not like the before the fire and after, but before COVID and after.
Yes, absolutely. I think, all the things that are taking the lives of firefighters, other than the trauma, and the trauma events are really way down. And that's a real tribute to America's training for incidents and the way we
And
approach
trauma would be
trauma
like
deaths, like what happened in Boston just recently, where a firefighter fell through the floor.
uh-huh.
You know, we have it, they still happen, and it's it's still possible for that to happen. But I think the training that we have for firefighters has really dramatically improved our operations on an emergency incident. But what we haven't caught up with is those blindside incidents, cancer, cardiac.
Right.
Yes. And I
Because
think
when you hear line of duty death,
that's what you think of.
I never thought, I would just think like falling, getting hurt. In a
Right.
fire.
Falling through a
It
floor.
happens to me.
Yes. Yeah.
But
A
it's-
building crashing down on a firefighter because the
Right.
structure
But
collapses.
it's actually, like you say, suicide, cancer,
Cardiac. Yes.
Yeah. So that's,
Yes.
that's the thing that is, I just hope people can sort of really hear that, because that's,
Yes, and it's all intertwined. It's what, and I think that's one of the great things that the First Responder Center for Excellence is doing is, although we're addressing mental health specific, but nutrition, sleep, fitness, your activity level, it's all intertwined. We cannot be addressing one without addressing all the others, because the body doesn't recognize it that way. So I think that's the value of what the First Responder Center of Excellence does, what this podcast is doing to really shine a light on all those issues so that we can be better trained, just as we have for the incident itself, the pre-incident planning, the things I need to do to be ready to respond to that incident. So I'm fit, I'm healthy, I've got good mental health, I've got good health, I've got good support at home because I'm caring about what's happening at home. All those things are so intertwined in what we do. And so thank you for, making sure we're addressing those areas and taking the veil off. Let's have those discussions and make sure that we're a better fire service because of it.
And I think there's pretty progressive departments across the country that are doing just that, right? We spend a lot of time training on the low acuity stuff, the lesser number of big accidents, whether that be, technical ropes, we call them over the edges or stuff like that, like rope rescues, obviously confined space, trench, truck work when we talked about roof, and then you've got fires, right? Those are the big, scary, dangerous things that we do. It's also the really cool stuff we get to do. But the stuff that we also need to train ourselves on specifically and start investing in training in health and wellness is health and wellness, peer support, cancer prevention, proper sleep. And I know there are departments out there that are doing it, but I don't know if there's enough. It's like, I don't know, it's kind of one of those things, the butterfly effect, right? We're dropping, and it's just now we're waiting for the wind to kick up. Because right now, all we see is the butterfly flapping right now. And I think we're on the cusp of it. And so it's pretty exciting. And I hope more departments get involved and say, you know what, if I invest in somebody's mental health today, I'm going to get 20, 25 years out of them. It's way, way, way cheaper to keep a person employed and healthy than it is to hire a new person. And then in the case of losing somebody, there's no dollar figure that solves that problem.
Yeah. And I think preparing people for what they're going to see, you're going to deal with a lot of death. And we are a society that doesn't deal with that kind of grief very well. And as the organization that responsible to honor every firefighter that dies in the line of duty, we work very closely with our families. And sometimes, and this is what probably motivates me more than anything, is seeing the resilience in our families when their loved one has died. And some of the things that they do to support others, they create foundations, they create a greater awareness. There's a family out of Minnesota who changed the law in Minnesota so that firefighters from Minnesota will be recognized as a line of duty death for cancer deaths under certain situations. And even though she and her family doesn't benefit from that, but future families will. And so, those are the kinds of things you see that, that type of resilience in a family who's lost a loved one. And that's, that just encourages us to keep doing what we're doing.
Right. They're channeling their grief in something that's, taking action. And that's a beautiful thing.
Yes,
despite the tragedy.
So how do we change the mindset in the fire service of the negative things that we see? Look, we get a front row seat of the worst that society has to show. So how do you turn that into a positive thing and not become so callous that you just stop caring about the community and you just become, a stone of a person?
Yeah.
So I think those are the things. That's what we'll be doing here in Iowa, and that's what we need to continue to do, along with everything else we just talked about. The fitness piece, the sleep, shift work. You probably have. I know for me, when I got promoted to a point where I was the duty chief, so I was responsible for all the operations on a 24-hour shift. And the night before, I'm going back and studying general orders, and I wanted to be on my A game. I knew I needed to be on my A game every single day when I showed up to work. And so, how does that impact your ability to rest? And so all these things we've just got to do a better job of preparing our firefighters. Because look, the fact is, there's hundreds of thousands of firefighters that have retired, and they may not say that they're totally mentally, tongue in cheek. They would say, yeah, of course I'm not completely right, but they live very healthy lives, and so there's a lot of hope for the fact that we can support and do the right things, and I think the newer generation of firefighters are expecting us to be able to provide that level of support. We're talking about it. We're beyond just awareness. Now it's time to really roll up our sleeves and do work that's meaningful to support our younger generations and our firefighters that are there and our retirees.
When you're thinking big picture, and like after maybe a symposium like this, a chief comes up and he says, "What can I do and how do I fund it?" What are your kind of like, let me point you in the right direction? How do you get them going the right direction for that?
Yeah. Well, first off, thank you for caring. That would be the first thing I'd say. So you're obviously you're thinking about what you need to do. There's a lot of great examples of departments, and some will be here. Some were here, and we did an event in Nashville last year. There's look at what Washington State is doing with regards to a lot of like cancer prevention. They were leading in many years. So take a look around. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. And then there's lots of really good examples. For example, Connecticut, it's a pretty small state, and there was a department who wanted to get a peer support program going. Well, they did a statewide peer support program, and so you can pool the resources of your local jurisdictions, and find ways to be able to support that, so it's not all on your shoulders. And a lot of times, and you'll know this from the fire service, you don't want to share things with your local firefighter. The firefighter you came up with, and you're like, I don't know that. But you get somebody from a different department who really doesn't know you, but is a peer. And I'll give you, a really good example. When the Charleston 9, there was 9 firefighters killed in about 2007. 9 firefighters killed in Charleston, South Carolina, in what's now known as the Super Sofa Store fire. The foundation came down. We were supporting that department right away, helping with the funerals and those kinds of things. But we were able to bring down members of the Fire Department of New York, FDNY members, who were peer support groups, and who also knew what it was like to lose a fellow firefighter. So they lost 343 in 2001. So that connection, bringing somebody down from another department, and having that peer support. I can tell you, I had a captain from the Charleston Fire Department. He's been retired for a number of years now, but he said, had it not been for that, I would not be walking on this earth. Wow. So that peer support really works. So I would tell that chief, there's a lot of great examples of how to get some things going that are low cost. And you need to convince your city managers, your people that are responsible for the funding, that level of training and that level of support is just as important as rope rescue, hazmat training, all that other type of training that is required. Because you mentioned it earlier, that's how you take care of people. That's how you have longevity. That's how you make sure that firefighters are not looking for another jurisdiction to go work, because they know they're in a place where people care.
No, I think that's a good point. I think the first one is you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
Like, we have some sort of mentality where we're not the smartest person in the room, but we've got great ideas. And doesn't mean other people don't have great ideas, but it's like with apparatus. Every department seems to make a different apparatus, and the manufacturers love it, which is great because they've got all these different specs. But we're all rolling to the same type of stuff. It's going to be either house, or it's going to be multi-comp family, or it's going to be commercial. That's about it for structure fires. There's not much else. So however you get there, and the water in, water out, bake at 350, pump at 150, like, okay, I get it. But I think the biggest piece is like reach out, and places like this symposium, working with the unions and going to the conferences, going to the local state trainings or your district trainings. Like, that's where you meet other people, like-minded individuals, get names and numbers, write it down, reach out to them, have those conversations. Because, it might not be talking in the same, the beanery table has all the answers, whether you like them or not.
Yes. What's the beanery?
That's the kitchen table.
Oh, okay.
The kitchen table,
table. But you can actually have a different conversation with somebody from a different department in a different state and learn something completely new that you might be able to incorporate in either yourself, your crew, or the department. So I think that's important.
As I was preparing comments for this symposium, one of the challenges I have for everyone is, don't just come here to learn. Make a decision, decide what you're going to do with what you learned, and go make a difference somewhere. Whether it's talking to somebody, starting a program, supporting a program, whatever it is. But if you just come here to learn, that's great. But let's put action to it, and that's exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
When people do leave here, and from the last one, what sort of like success stories have you heard about? Like, hey, from this, I brought this back and we made these changes.
Yeah. Frank could probably give you a better idea, but yeah, a lot of the comments back. One was, we brought, and just like we'll have here in the next couple of days, world-renowned people who are working in that space of suicide prevention and mental health and for public safety and the military. So the comments that came back were, it was life-changing for them, that there was things that they kind of sort of knew, but it really solidified what actions can be taken. We had and we will have lots of really good examples of what success looks like for some departments. And when it comes to mental health and suicide prevention, there's no magic bullet. There's so much, not enough, but there's a lot of work, especially with the military, and they have not solved it. So this is not an easy thing to solve, but we are moving the needle, and we're making an impact, and I think that's probably the greatest reward of from the last symposium, is knowing that people have talked about how they've supported their own organizations. They've taken what other organizations were doing and implemented them themselves, and then learned about the fact that it's we just have to roll up our sleeves every day and keep working at it, because there's no finish line for what we're doing.
Right. It just keeps moving.
Yes. Yeah.
You were telling me a little bit before we started rolling about in May, what's happening in Boston.
Yes. So firefighter Captain Kilduff from the Boston Fire Department was killed just about a week or so ago. And tomorrow will be his funeral. So today they had a procession. All the Boston and local fire departments from around the area convened in their full dress uniforms, and they're at the church, and they will be, or they probably already have by now, processed through to pay their last respects as the fire, and then tomorrow will be the actual memorial service, but and funeral. But it's just those rich traditions and values about how we honor our fallen. I will often think about the organizations that support us, and organizations that or individuals that want to help the foundation with what we do. And I often think about, you really want to know the character of an organization. Ask them how they honor our fallen heroes, and that'll tell you a lot about how what they're made of. And I think that's the beauty and the value of the fire service. That we maintain those values, regardless. It's cross-generational. Captain Kilduff is a third-generation firefighter. I believe it was his father who died of cancer before we were recognizing cancer as a line of duty death. So, this is a family that understands the fire service, understands what dedication means, and being part of something bigger than yourself. And so that's why these memorials are so important, because these are men and women who are dedicated to serving their communities, and that's why it's important that we honor them appropriately and support their families and do everything we can to prevent them from dying on the job.
And do you fly around the country a lot?
I don't go to all the funerals. If I did, I'd have to be one probably about
You
every
need your own
second
private
day.
jet maybe, and
Yes. But I do travel quite a bit, and and try to do what we can to support what the FRCE does, all our line of duty death prevention programs, and then to try to garner support to be able to continue to meet the mission. And as I mentioned earlier, we've typically, for many years, we've said, about 100 firefighters die in the line of duty per year. We honored 204 just a few weeks ago at the National Memorial in Emmitsburg, Maryland. Last year, we had a special service in New York City and Staten Island to honor 176 firefighters that had not been honored at the National Memorial who've died of post 9/11 diseases. We honored 316 total firefighters in 2025. So that number of honorees is going to continue to increase. Now that we've fully recognizing cancer and suicide, the criteria has changed because we're recognizing that there's things that are taking the lives of firefighters that we didn't know about before, but now we know, and we need to honor them just as much as we honor that firefighter who falls through a floor, has a building crash down on them, whatever the case may be. They raised their right hand, they took an oath, they served their community, and we honor them for how they lived, not for how they died.
wow.
Yeah, very heavy. How do people support the National Firefighter Foundation and FRCE? What's the mechanism for that?
So you can go to either one of the websites, frce.org or NFFF or firehero.org. There's a donate button. That's the best way to support. Funding is essential. We do fundraisers. There's over 50 stair climbs that we'll be doing in the September timeframe to honor the 343 plus the almost 400 firefighters that have died from September 11th in New York and other jurisdictions as well. You can participate in that. It's usually about $30 or $40. You get a T-shirt and a badge with one of the firefighters' names and pictures on it. That's a great way to honor our fallen and support the organization. So get involved with one of our fundraising events. But those are the two best ways to support, so that we can continue to meet the mission and keep the promise of honoring and remembering.
Yes, thank you.
I can't think of a better place to.
Yeah, exactly.
And thank you so much.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks for the opportunity. Really appreciate it. Yeah.
Learn more about the documentary at spokemovie.com.